Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Welcome into the awesome collaboration between L&D Cares and Global Learning and Development Community, which is affectionately known as GLDC. You are in the panel discussion for Let's Talk Leadership. I'm your host, Rita Sookrit. Before we begin, I'd like to take care of some housekeeping items. First of all, for any technical issues, try refreshing your screen by pressing the F5, which is function key 5, or use the purple question mark with icon located on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. On your right panel, there's the chat box, the Q&A, and the poll. Please submit questions in the Q&A tab. Show support by using the smiley emoticon, and you can find that towards the bottom of the screen around the middle area. And right beside the smiley is the raise hand as well as the closed caption. So feel free to use those if you need to. This session is being taped for our speakers. What I'm going to do is introduce the panelists before beginning the discussion. Our panelists this morning are, first up is Brooke Waller. She's a dynamic speaker, career strategist, and public relations professional. She is the CEO of Brooke Bold Media and has a passion for helping young women find their voice, purpose, and building self-confidence. Next is Amanda Kimmel, an L&D consultant with Hemsley Fraser. She is passionate about creating and delivering client-unique learning experiences that drive engagement, development, and organizational results. Amanda has more than 20 years experience in this vocation, and she holds a master's degree in adult education and training. And last is Nikeya Young, author, certified master life coach, speaker, and entertainer, a former educator with a master's degree in special education and a bachelor's in psychology. Nikeya combines her gifts and talents, practical work experience, and spiritual gift of teaching to encourage others to live victoriously. She is especially passionate about empowering women and helping them to discover their identity and purpose. Please put your virtual hands together and welcome Nikeya, Amanda, and Brooke. Thank you. We will begin with our first question. How has leadership changed as a result of the pandemic? So let's begin with Nikeya, then I'll move to Amanda and Brooke. Again, the question, Nikeya, is how has leadership changed as a result of the pandemic? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rita. And can everyone hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. I've been having some weird issues with my technology this morning. So good, you guys can hear me. Perfect. So how has leadership changed throughout the course of this pandemic? Well, we've all been forced to pivot like never before. We've been forced to step out of our comfort zones like never before. Everything that we knew about leadership that worked really well when we were in person, face to face, we had to try to figure out ways to be more creative and to convey our messaging in ways that we wouldn't normally. I have never been on AirMeet platform before. This is new to me. I've done Zoom, I've done Google Hangouts, so just constantly staying on our toes. The pandemic has forced us to stretch and grow in ways that maybe we would not have had it not been for the world just suddenly deciding to fall apart. But sometimes things fall apart so they can fall together in the most beautiful ways. So it's forced us to shift our perspective and think on our feet. And I think that we've all come out better for it.
Thank you, Nikeya. Amanda, same question. How has leadership changed as a result of the pandemic?
Thanks so much, Rita and Nikeya. I would say while we're all human, prior to the pandemic, the events of 2020 exposed our vulnerabilities, fears, and a continuum of emotions from every level and angle throughout every organization, with each individual being impacted in some way, every way. We learned to flex greater, being comfortable with not knowing the answers and meeting individuals where they are or were. Not ever before 2020, the significance and importance of emotional intelligence was paramount. Leaders found themselves flexing their typical leadership styles and navigating ambiguity to lead their organizations through times that no one could have believed to become real in this modern day. Now more than ever, the criticality of leadership was at stake, from innovatively reshaping business models and product innovations to keeping employees on the front lines safe, taking a seemingly uncomfortable plunge for some into remote work life. Leadership endurance has revolutionized throughout the world as a result of the pandemic.
Wow, that's amazing. I really like the fact that you brought in the employees there as well and keeping them safe, especially with the mental health. Brooke, again, to you, how has leadership changed as a result of the pandemic?
Yes, thank you. Leadership has changed as a result of the pandemic because we have had to pivot. We have had to show up in new, fresh, and creative ways. Also, leadership, we have had to take a time to reset. We have had to take a time to reset as leaders and reset in society. Also, we are being more compassionate, empathetic, and caring as a leader. Recently, a new survey by KPMG of female executives found that 96% of female executives acknowledge that they have adjusted the way they lead or motivate their teams based on the pandemic. We have shifted and we have become more empathetic as leaders. Thank you.
Oh, Brooke, you know what? It's impressive because during the past year as well, there's been so many research and surveys that have been conducted, and the focus that has been on women has been incredible. I mean, shout out to everyone that's finally including us and giving us the recognition that we so deserve. My next question to you is then, what do you see as the next normal for today's leaders? Perhaps, Amanda, you could start us off with that. What do you see as the next normal for today's leaders, given the pivoting and the creativity and everything else? Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Rita. Absolutely. So the next normal for today's leaders is really establishing what that new normal is after taking some significant leaps and bounds without having been able to plan during that time or having to move through all the changes so significantly. Figuring out what those right business models and working models are for organizations and overcoming the new stressors of moving on to, once again, something new. Having been through what we were in 2020, it's a reminder that we don't know what we might be up against next, and taking the lessons learned and the methodologies we've applied over the past 15 months to increase the way we lead and navigate through change. There's still definitely more to come in figuring out, what is best for each organization, taking into account, is it a hybrid workplace model? Is it still maintaining that remote working status? All of those elements that impact culture, impact business, and inform what the future state is.
Wow. It's a lot impacted in that response. That's some overcoming the new stressors, lessons learned, hybrid culture. I'm going to take this a different slant to you, Nikeya, and ask you, when we hit the pandemic way back when, I like to say, leaders also had to go through a transformation because they weren't comfortable or hadn't done remote management or leadership. Can you, from your experience, have you seen, what can you share about that remote leadership style and how has it evolved or not evolved, or where is it going? Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Okay, I'm sorry, Rita. You were breaking up a little bit, so I couldn't hear the end of the question. Can you repeat that for me?
Okay, the leadership, when we went to the pandemic, it became from the face-to-face to remote leadership. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about leading, but leading remotely. Can you?
It's still breaking up. That's so weird. Okay, I'm gonna repeat what I thought the question was. And I'm sorry, I'm having.
It's okay.
I'm hearing bits and pieces, and then it just fades out. So I'm trying to see what I can do, if that's on my end or yours. But I think you said, just basically speaking to how to adjust from going in person to going remote, like how did I adjust to that?
Yes. Yes.
Was that it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So one of the main things that I do for leadership is Toastmasters. I'm very active in Toastmasters International. And if any of you are familiar with Toastmasters International, it is one of the best things that you can ever involve yourself in as a leader and as a speaker. And it's an international organization. One of the best parts is being in person and getting that instant feedback and the energy in the room and all of that. So having to shift to doing that all online, we had some members that were more reluctant to that than others. So it was overall just hard for a lot of clubs to stay open. And so I had to dig into my creative bag of tricks and just really make sure that the meetings were fun, were engaging, the table topics that we were doing were engaging, just maybe hopping on a little bit earlier before our club meeting started, because I served as club president and vice president of education. And just kind of talking, how's everybody doing? This is crazy, right? Just gauging how they're feeling emotionally. And then that just broke the ice a little bit. And so it got to the point where first people were dreading it. And then it's like, oh, okay, I'm looking forward to this because I can't hang out with my friends, but I can hop online and hang out with my Toastmasters buddies. So that's one thing that we're going to have to continue to do as leaders, because if I would have came with an attitude like, okay, y'all, we got to do these boring Zoom meetings, then that would have leaked into the club. But when I came in like, come on, you guys, let's do it, it helped to shift the energy of the club. So that's how I made my adjustment into doing everything virtual. And now they don't want to go back to in person. Now they're having so much fun online. They're just like, this isn't bad. Can we keep the virtual going?
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned Toastmasters. I myself used an alumni for about 15 years. I did it. And I tell you, it has changed me, not just externally, but internally as well. Now, whether I speak in front of 5 or 5,000 people, it makes no difference, but that's what it gives you. And I thank you for sharing that. And thank you for, especially in leadership, we really need those kind of skills. Brooke, I want to ask you this question. With leadership, we stay away from the I and we're really more inclusive. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about Josh Bergen states that, we should build a we versus an I mentality. We should focus on people helping each other. And to you, what does that mean to you? Could you share a little bit about that for us? A we, not an I mentality?
Sure. I believe that leadership is a skill and an ability to have people emulate what you do and willing to do what you ask. It is the ability to have people to believe in you and follow a goal. Leadership also fundamentally is the ability to replicate and make other leaders. It's a willingness to ask as much as of yourself than you do of others. And if I ask someone to do something, I as a leader have to be able to do that and more. And it's not just about I, but it's about we. We're a team, we're in this together. It's the ability to communicate a goal and a vision. And it's so important to have honesty and integrity as good foundations as a leader.
Okay, that's really, replicate and make other leaders. It's sort of like passing the torch.
Yes.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Amanda, I'm going to ask you to pick up on that a little bit and take it one step, further. So how would you do that? What sort of things would you implement, roll out? How would you do that? How would you pass that torch on? Please share with us.
Sure. Great question and prompt, Rita, and thank you for that, Brooke. What, truly, when you think about it, the old adage of it takes a village, it truly does, right? So when we think about the best accomplishments in the world, in organizations, the innovations, it goes to engagement and empowerment. How do we engage and empower and through our teams, right? Involvement, encourage, to have the confidence, to give someone the opportunity, the inclusivity of ideas. That's what makes the innovation come to life. And, just through multiple ways of doing so, mostly about giving others that chance, that opportunity, encouraging them, supporting them, ensuring their development throughout.
Oh, thank you. You know what? All three of you had a common thread in your introduction. You both talked about inspiring women. And Nikeya, I'd like to push this to you a little bit more. And because Amanda mentioned inclusivity, which is so topical, and it's not our topic today, diversity, inclusion, equity, and all that. But can you talk a bit more about inclusivity and women in this leadership realm? Can you take it one step further for us?
Sure, absolutely. I think that now we're in a time where inclusivity and caring about other ethnicities and people, gender roles, and all that different stuff is, I want to say it's trendy now. And we have to make sure that we go from it being on trend to really getting in our hearts. No, we really have to have empathy for people. No, we really need to seek out women, who can do these roles just as well as men can, and they've been here all along, and they're educated and qualified. It can't be this thing where we're doing this now because it's the in thing to do, and then after a while we just go back to everything being back to an old boys club and people of color being pushed back, to the outer margins and business as usual. So I like that everything is focusing more on inclusion, and I just hope that it stays that way. But in order for it to stay that way, we all have to do our part to make sure that all voices are being heard. So that's what I can speak to that part. I'm happy it's happening. I just want it to continue happening.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to change gear a little bit and talk a bit leadership. Now, we know leadership, we recognize, we emulate what we like in people that we consider really good leaders and so on. But let me ask you, Brooke, maybe you could start us off. Is leadership an event or a process? What's your take on that? Do you see it as an event or a process?
Thank you so much, Rita, for that. I believe that leadership is definitely a process, that every day you have to work on, how can I do better? Look at myself in the mirror. How can I change, continue to grow as a leader? When I think about leadership, I think about Black women. And I think about there are 2 Black female CEOs in the Fortune 500 list. And this is for the first time ever. Rosalind Brewer, CEO of Walgreens, to Sandra Duckett, CEO of TIA. Black people account for 3.2% of senior leadership roles at companies in the US, and only 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs are filled by African Americans, despite forming 13.4% of the population. Only 19 Black CEOs have ever been on Fortune 500. It is a process, and I'm passionate about helping young Black women find their passion, find their leadership skills so they can show up to the workplace and be in these Fortune 500 leadership roles. Thank you.
Oh, wow. That's thank you for quoting those facts as well. And yes, I agree with you. But let's hear from Amanda. Amanda, can you take that and continue on with the conversation? How can we be more inclusive, more recognizing other leaders other than I don't mean to sound disrespectful here, but the white, approach? How can you talk a little bit about that? Thank you.
Yeah, it's definitely as we think of this topic, as humans in human nature, I think sometimes, we tend to just lean towards thoughts that may be similar to our own. So we have to really be open to how do we intentionally include others, diversity of thought, right? Diversity of individualisticness, bringing, those opportunities, setting the stage in the forum as leaders to model that behavior and welcome it, right? So really being intentional. And I think going back to what Nikeya had indicated, it's what are we doing internally, right? If we are creating some networks to open this dialogue and the forum for discussion to within our projects, including different individuals. We tend to, within organizations, rely on those same high potentials that we're focused on and such. But what if we're missing someone behind the scenes that is more quiet? Just those intentional opportunities to help build the confidence of individuals and their credibility, being that advocate and support network. I think those are some of the ways in which we can really expound upon inclusivity across all.
Yes. I really like, the choice words you three are using is just so inspiring. Network, advocate, inclusivity. Nikeya, I can't not let you have your comments added to this question. Please go ahead. I can see you want to say something. Please go ahead. Can you hear me?
Who are you directing that to?
To you. I just wanted to see if you wanted to add to the conversation that Amanda and Brooke has just so eloquently shared their thoughts. Would you like to add?
Oh, they did a great job. We definitely have to be proactive in drawing folks in. The people are there. They have the skills. It's just, there's one of my favorite movies is the Temptations. And there's a scene in the Temptations where one of the band members he's hogging the spotlight and, and Otis goes, they're here to see the Temptations. And he goes, ain't nobody come to see you, Otis. Like, everybody's here to see me. He's just all in the spotlight. And I think, as humorous as that is, I think that we see that happen in our companies a lot. You know, they're here to see me. No, they would never say that, but the attitude, if you're always on the mic and you're never offering the mic around the room to see or hear what other people have to say, then you have become that arrogant band member in the Temptations, hogging the spotlight. So you have to be willing to get the feedback.
And I wonder how many people know of the Temptations. I actually saw them in concert, so I'm dating myself here. And I don't want to run out of time because I really want us to spend a bit of, give you enough time to share your thoughts. Listen, coming to the final question here, the future is changing. What would you say, and I'm going to ask each of you the same question, what would you say are the top 2 competencies for future leaders? So for future leaders, what 2 top competencies do you see we need, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic and we're starting to return to the new normal? Amanda, would you like to start us off?
Gladly, thanks. In thinking about this and narrowing it down to 2 competencies, right? I'm looking at it from an angle of really emotional agility, right? In going back to what we spoke about earlier in how leadership has changed as a result of the pandemic, where times in organizations, maybe that, we've spoken of emotional intelligence and the importance of it being a part of leadership, though that has really come to life, the need to leverage that EQ and hold that EQ. In addition to that, I would probably add 2, really 3 in total, emotional wellness, thinking of not only what ourselves as leaders have been through, but absolutely what our team members continue to endure and the change that we've brought them through and continue to bring them through within the organizations. And the other one that I'm passionate about is also a vulnerability, embracing vulnerability. This, with the pandemic and these Zoom meetings and virtual meetings, it has exposed us as individuals and just the importance of that, the importance of whether it's your child that has joined the screen and you're in a team meeting, or it's your cat or dog. It not only those things are okay. We are human, and more so embracing vulnerability and allowing ourselves to be open to vulnerability, because the vulnerability also within our development is so important. Whether we as leaders are being more vulnerable and offering vulnerability with our team members, or allowing them to be more vulnerable in their development.
That's amazing. You know, you're so true about just the emotional aspect, because we too, as leaders, managers, as well as employees, all face the same challenges once we went remote. And in respect to vulnerability, we saw some things we probably should not have seen on Zoom. I mean, let's face it, there were some Kodak moments there. Nikeya, would you like to share what your top 2 competencies would be for future leaders?
Absolutely. So I agree with what Amanda just said. My 2 were actually relational intelligence and vision. So relational intelligence is an all-encompassing term that includes self-awareness, your communicational skills, discernment. You're going to have to learn how to be a people person if you're going to be a leader. And that doesn't mean you have to change your personality type to, okay, now I'm a flaming extrovert. It doesn't mean you have to change who you are, but relational intelligence, being self-aware, having that emotional wellness, and not only for yourself, but being able to lean into your team and to see what's going on with them, that's not going to change. And that definitely came out a lot more during the pandemic, because we're all virtual. And so we had to, really pivot and do that. So that's going to continue to be the trend going forward. Now that we're in person again, don't forget everything that you learned during this pandemic in terms of relational intelligence. There's actually a book on that, and it's called Relational Intelligence by Dr. Darius Daniels. I'm an avid reader, so if any leaders out there, this one is for you. And vision, where are you taking these people? Because if you're going nowhere, any road will get you there. So that's a big competency, not only having a clear-cut vision, but being able to communicate that vision to your team. So those are my.
Yes. And vision is always, like, it was there before, it was there during, it's going to be there after. Because if you can't articulate your vision, oh my goodness, you've just lost your whole credibility there. And you know what? Thank you for sharing relational intelligence. I really like that concept. I mean, the people side, the human side, everything is just shifting into that relationship. I'm going to check out that book. I wrote it into the chat for everyone as well. Nikeya, thank you. Brooke, how about you? The top 2 competencies you see, or, as for future leaders, what would you say they are? Brooke, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I have that book as well, Nikeya, and I love it. I was gifted. I was in a room on Clubhouse, and I was gifted, and I love that book. My top 2 is resilience and empathy. I believe as a leader that you have to be resilient. You have to, no matter what, when the going gets tough, when your back is up against the wall, you have to work extra hours at work or put in extra time. You have to be resilient and have that courage to go on, even though there might be some fear, some doubt. We didn't know of uncertainty with the pandemic, so many people dying and passing away and going through all that. You have to be resilient. And I feel that as a leader that's going forward, that resiliency is going to take you far. You're stronger and braver than what you thought that you could be. And that is so important. And my second point is empathy. Empathy. I believe that as leaders, sometimes this is one of the characteristics that oftentimes we don't think about, is being empathetic, asking someone how are they doing, and really coming from a genuine place that you really care, because that goes beyond leadership, that you're not just checking the box off a task to do at work, but empathetic leaders, they go far. They care, they genuinely care about their team, their emotional, mental health, and well-being. And empathetic leaders will take it to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. I really like the way you summed it up there nicely with the resilience and the genuine empathy, because you know what? That is the true sign of leaders to me as well. We are at the end of our session, and I absolutely enjoyed my conversation with Nikeya, Amanda, and Brooke. I learned a lot from you and your perspectives, and I really am thankful that you were able to join myself in the audience this morning. So let me, just one final word you want to leave us with. I'm going to go quick here. One final word on leadership. Nikeya, one word.
Oh God, one word. Keep going. That's 2 words, but
that's okay.
Keep going.
Brooke, what about you? One word.
Be yourself.
Okay, that's fine. And Amanda?
I think Brooke hit it with resiliency.
Okay, and on that note, let's be resilient. And audience, thank you so much for your wonderful encouragement to our first-time speakers here today. I don't know about you, but these are not first-time speakers. These are pros. Thank you, Nikeya. Thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Brooke. Great job.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.